AgWeek Weather is sponsored by Bremer Bank. Connect with a banker today at bremer.com.
How is the weather faring as we head into the heart of growing season? Here's Lydia with our Agri-weather outlook.
Latest drought monitor does show some improvements in our area. The eastern part of the country looking okay, obviously very saturated in some spots, and then the western half of the country quite dry, especially in those desert climates, no surprise. As for locally, the tri-state area, we only have a couple spots that have even the severe drought, that orange color showing up about Roseau County toward Lake of the Woods, along and north of Highway 2 for North Dakota into northern Minnesota is where we find the majority of our dry conditions, and then about the I-90 corridor and down to the south into Nebraska for the South Dakota sections. I wanted to look at, though, as we're in the thick of growing season, how much of our crop is affected by drought conditions right now. And so I was able to break down the percent of each state's crop. We're starting off with corn here. Currently in North Dakota, 17% is under dry. You've got all your different levels of drought across the top. You can call it 1 through 5. A level 1 layer of drought, about 17% in North Dakota, 31% in South Dakota, and 6% in Minnesota. So we still have very dry conditions. But then I thought it was interesting to look back just 2 months ago. That's your numbers in red here. And just see how big of a difference. We've had some super soakers, some beneficial periodic rain, and so we've really seen a reversal in these numbers. Just 2 months ago, 97% of South Dakota's corn was under a level 1 drought. We can do the same for soybeans. Currently 32% under a level 1 drought in North Dakota, 10% in a level 2 drought, 30% in South Dakota, and 15% for that level 1 drought specifically for soybeans in South Dakota and in Minnesota. And then we look 2 months ago, and once again, 97% of soybeans were under drought conditions. There was a point earlier this spring where the entire state of South Dakota was dealing with some level of drought. And then for sugar beets, specifically looking at North Dakota and Minnesota, South Dakota doesn't grow sugar beets, still about 70% of the crop dealing with a level 1 area of drought. Again, that is further up to the north, where I just showed you the drought monitor north of Highway 2. For Minnesota, at one point, 99%, that was back on May 20th, of the sugar beets were under at least some layer of drought. And we've seen a large improvement. I do have a wet pattern setting up too. Almost a storm pattern. I see the jet stream sitting with us here as we go throughout the next couple of weeks. And that brings in layers of thunderstorms, one after another, which can, of course, lead to beneficial rain, but can also lead to hail and damaging winds this time of year. This pattern does continue into the following week, too. This now takes us to the very end of July, where I see more moisture moving in kind of from the northwest down to the southeast. We will have to watch out for any sort of a derecho setup as we're at that time of year. Big heat dome develops in the middle of the country. I do see, especially around the Corn Belt, Iowa toward Indiana, that's where we're watching out for very hot weather. We start warming up in the northern plains into next week, and we do so especially as we wrap up the month of July.